And so on to the referendum. What is this referendum about? The proposal in the referendum concerns the issue of blasphemy. The Constitution says that publishing or saying something blasphemous is a criminal offence, and so to give effect to the constitutional requirement, publishing or uttering something blasphemous is a criminal offence under our law, with a fine of up to €25,000 if a person is convicted of that offence, and it's under the 2009 Defamation Act. The proposed amendment in this referendum is to remove the word blasphemous from the Constitution. I'm joined by Tim Jackson, who's advocating a vote no. Good morning to you, Tim.
Good morning, Al.
And I'm joined by John Hamill, who's advocating a vote yes. Good morning, John.
Good morning,
Alan. Okay, so I'll come to you first off, Tim. What is your definition of blasphemy?
My definition of blasphemy is a grossly abusive or unnecessarily inflammatory comment, remark, or publication that is deliberately intended to cause outrage, and that there's in saying that I'm simply following what the legislation states, which is why there hasn't been a prosecution in 163 years on the matter. The legislation is crafted in such a way that it's totally open and free to hearing all ideas, and yet it just indicates that we need to do so in a way that prevents people being grossly abused or their ideas. So all ideas are welcome, but it must be done in a respectful manner. And the point being is that this is the best way to maintain peaceable relations between peoples of all faiths and none, which is why the authors of our Constitution inserted it into the Constitution. One of the reasons they inserted it into the Constitution was this, given that maintaining the peace and order in a society is all important.
Okay, John Hamill, I'll come back to you in a second, Tim. What's your definition of blasphemy?
Well, I think Tim has accurately described what it says in the legislation, and the reason why that is not compatible with our human rights obligations is that it infringes on our right to free expression. And the most important thing about that right is that it relates to the rights of the listener as much as it relates to the rights of the speaker. So I suspect many of your listeners will be like me, in that I can think of lots of issues in which I was previously wrong, but I was convinced to change my mind. And I think it's quite likely that I still hold beliefs that are wrong today. But how can I know which of my beliefs are wrong unless I can listen to those who disagree with me? And a good way to guarantee that you'll continue to be wrong much longer than you need to be is to make it illegal for someone to offend your existing beliefs. And there's lots of examples of that in Ireland. So Monty Python's Life of Brian was banned as blasphemous in Ireland. But I think that people have moved on since the 1970s, and now we're happy to listen to things that we disagree with, even if those things mock or ridicule our beliefs. So if there's another movie made next year that tries to mock or ridicule the Catholic teaching on women, or say the teaching on gay people, then I think that Irish Catholics are strong enough in their faith not to ban material even when it offends them, because I mean that kind of mockery about religious ideas, I mean, it might cause some people to change their minds, it might cause nobody to change their mind, but the right to free expression means that we all have the right to listen and decide for ourselves, and blasphemy laws mean that the most sensitive among us can demand that no one else in the country is allowed the opportunity to listen.
And so could I just...
Tim, respond,
For John to imply that anyone is denied the right to express their views on Catholic teachings, for example, is not accurate in any way, shape or form. And one can sense that by reading through the opinion pieces of any newspaper from week to week, or discussions on TV for that matter. And so what this is about is continuing to allow the full expression of ideas, but just doing so in a way that isn't grossly abusive, so as to maintain peaceable relations between peoples of all communities, and to maintain order in society.
So if you vote no, Tim, then the status quo remains. It stays as is. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Exactly. And the 2009 Defamation Act is crafted in such a way that it's very difficult to secure a prosecution under the blasphemy clause of the referendum, which I think most people will agree is a sensible approach.
And John, if we vote yes, then what will change?
Well, change is that we will have a press in this country that will no longer self-censor itself because of our blasphemy law. So Tim is quite wrong to say that all of the different opinions about religious teachings are freely expressed. So if I asked him to list all of the articles that were censored from our newspapers because of blasphemy laws, Of course, Tim can't do that because he didn't read them because they were censored. I know what some of them are because I wrote some of them, and some of the articles that I wrote for local newspapers in Ireland were censored because they were blasphemous. So
could I ask, John, which idea would I not be allowed to express on radio or in the papers under the 2009 Defamation Act?
Well, there's exactly the point, Tim, because you and I might go through a number of criticisms of religious ideas, and you and I might agree which ones are offensive or which ones cross the line and which ones don't. But it's not up to us. What happens in the country at the minute is that the person who makes the decision about what is blasphemous and what is not is the most conservative and sensitive reader of the newspaper. And I have personal experience of that, because when I submit articles to newspapers, what the sub-editors tell me is that, look, I don't think this is blasphemous, but I know I have some readers who might. And if one of those readers takes a blasphemy case in the court, then the newspaper has to go and defend that and spend a lot of money defending that, and they've already lost at that point. So what the newspaper does is they just decide to self-censor themselves, they play it safe, and they don't publish it. So you and I might agree, Tim, on what's blasphemous or offensive, but it doesn't matter what you and I agree on.
So I think that editors...
Yeah, all right, John, you've had a good run at that. Now let Tim respond to you there. Tim.
So I think that perhaps editors and writers in this country, and I'm not sure that there's many of them, have unwarranted sensitivities around the matter if that's the case, because the legislation itself states that if those contributions, pieces or remarks are of any literary, cultural or academic value at all, then that defendant will be found not guilty in a courtroom, which is why there hasn't been a prosecution.
Well, can I ask both of you, Tim?
Years.
Okay, Tim, can I ask both? I'll stick with you, Tim. There seems to be very little interest in this. Are you surprised by that?
I'm not at all surprised, because for most people, they haven't given it a second thought in their lives. And I think the feedback I've been receiving as well is that this is a massive waste of taxpayers' money, cost them millions, and a totally unnecessary move by the government, an act of virtue signalling essentially, and one which does not in any way, shape or form affect the day-to-day lives of normal people as they go about their business.
Okay, let John respond to that. John, have you noticed apathy towards it, or is it just people, it hasn't been publicised enough to make people aware of what it is? I mean, what's your view?
Well, it's certainly taken a second place behind the presidential election, and I think that's to be expected. The president of the country is a significant figure, and those debates have, to a degree, drowned out the debate on the blasphemy referendum. And against that, as Tim says, we need to run our democracy efficiently, and it saves money to have the vote on the same day as the presidential election. So I think this seems to be the most efficient way to bring our legislation into line with human rights, and that's a good thing to do.
We cut straight to what blasphemy is, and asking both of you to give a reason why Tim says vote no and you say vote yes. Just a little bit of your own backgrounds. What's your background, Tim? Why are you so engaged by this?
I was an election candidate in the last general election in Donegal, and since that I've been involved in various debates, for instance, around the Eighth Amendment and other topics. And I just feel as if the authors of the Constitution shed their blood, essentially, so that we could be free and be a people who had a substantive document in order to secure order and peace in society, and that we should tread very carefully indeed before even considering changing any clause or article of the Constitution. And therefore I think that we have to put great weight and a certain level of trust in their own in the education that these men and women received in political philosophy, because there are very deep and good reasons for including clauses and restrictions around areas of sensitivity. And so if this referendum passes, the clauses on sedition and indecent speech will remain, because I think, and John would probably agree, that free speech isn't an absolute right. I don't have a right to climb onto a plane and shout fire. Similarly, I must present my ideas with respect, avoiding grossly abusing the religious beliefs of other people in society. All right,
give John a chance to respond to the same question. You've told us about writing, John, and the way sometimes you feel you're restricting what you write, and that this could free you up. Correct me if I'm wrong, to be a little bit more vociferous. What's your own background?
Yeah, well, I'm a member of Atheist Ireland, and atheists here in Ireland have some experience of our beliefs being offended. And so not too long ago, Cardinal Cormac Murphy O'Connor, in a television interview, said that atheists are not fully human. And so that's not nice for me to listen to. That's not nice for my kids to listen to. But I didn't want to go down to the nearest Garda station and report a crime. I think in an open democratic society, we have to be adult and mature enough to listen to people who have beliefs that are different from ours and allow them to express their view. And I think the vast majority of Roman Catholics in Ireland are strong enough in their faith to listen to people who disagree with them without trying to drag them in front of the High Court and fine them €25,000. And that's why I think even Roman Catholics in Ireland should vote yes to remove the blasphemy law.
And look, there's comments coming in saying people won't know what way to vote because it's not really explained in layman terms. I think both of you have done very well to explain it this morning. So just, I have to wrap it up. So can I give you 30 seconds each? I know a lot of people say that what happened on The Meaning of Life, the discussion with Gay Byrne and Stephen Fry, is that what spawned it? Tim, is that where it came from?
I don't think so. The genesis of this is in a constitutional convention where the members advocated removing the clause and replacing it with something else, and the government is replacing it.
Okay, 30 seconds then, Tim. Make it as easy as you can for people to understand from your perspective. You're advocating a no vote, so in 30 seconds, can you tell us why we should vote no?
A no vote is the wisest decision to make because it maintains a proper and ordered form of free speech in this country, which respects all members of debates surrounding religious issues and maintains peaceable relations so that no one's sincerely held beliefs are grossly abused. And so the authors of the Constitution inserted this clause because they knew that there needed to be certain sensible restrictions on free speech, and be aware that the government over the decades have used referenda such as this to undermine the foundations of the Constitution and deconstruct a document that was so bitterly fought for.
Okay, and the same for you, John, then, in as simple a way as possible. Why should people vote yes?
I think people should vote yes to remove the blasphemy law because of what happened immediately after we introduced our blasphemy law in 2009. What happened was that in Pakistan, a Christian lady called Asia Bibi was sentenced to death for blasphemy. And at the United Nations, Ireland was part of a group of Western countries who wanted to campaign in order to save Asia Bibi's life and to campaign against blasphemy laws in repressive countries. And what Pakistan did in response was that they proposed to the United Nations that the exact verbatim language from the Irish blasphemy law should be adopted by the United Nations as international law. So how can we campaign to save the life of Christian ladies like Asia Bibi if the people who want to execute Asia Bibi are citing the exact law that we introduced in Ireland? So I don't think we should turn our backs on people like Asia Bibi and other people around the world who are the victims of these kind of blasphemy laws and repressive regimes. We should remove our blasphemy law as part of our campaign to have those repressive countries reformed.
Thank you both for joining me. I have to leave it there. Tim Jackson advocating a no vote, John Hamill advocating a yes vote. When we come back, we will turn our attention to sport.